matter what happens in the industry, Nissan just seems to always manage to do something special. I mean, when you really think about it, that's not the company that should be doing anything really special at any time. Nissan's old CEO literally escaped potential jail time by having two people sneak him out of a country in a suitcase. This was just a couple years ago, and they still managed to make the Nissan GT-R a banger and just refused to admit that there was anything going on there. So why does it seem like they're always so polarly opposite in terms of political and social stance and how they're even successful as a company? I don't know. Nissan is the company that seems to always be split in two when you actually look at it. Half trying to be a normal company like a normal adult, and the other one being the younger brother that is just strapping Roman candles to the front of bicycles because it seems fun. I want to be friends with the younger brother. I don't give a shit about the older brother and him being in accounting, okay? I'm Alex that on Instagram, and today's episode of What Happened, we're taking a look at our sometimes love to hate, sometimes hate to love brand that has an incredible time in the industry until they didn't with something that was a little brother's dream and then turned into a big brother's dream. We're talking about just what exactly happened to Nissan's Nismo. And before we even move forward, drop a comment below on what you think about Nismo and when you first saw that acronym, okay? When did you first see it? Did you see it in a video game? Maybe a little Gran Turismo, maybe a dealership or a race? It'd be kind of interesting to know. I saw it at the Eau Claire dealership on a red Nismo, and it was a 350Z, and I remember that's when I fell in love with Nissans. I can't remember how old I was, but my dad let me, we just stopped by. It was actually pretty cool. And don't forget to subscribe. We're trying to get to 1 million subs, and your loving commitment to pressing that red button would make me very, very happy. Look at my face. Do I look happy? And if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. Get your shit in under 10 days. I know there's a lot of call to actions there, but really we just want to let you know that 1, subscribe, 2, engage with us. That'd be pretty slick. And 3, if you're looking to buy stuff, now's the time, all right? And we'll get it to you in 10 days. There's nothing has changed. Nismo or Nissan Motorsport, just take the first 3 of the first word and the first 2 of the second word, you get yourself your Nismo, was an abbreviation that would grace our presence in 1984 after Nissan made the executive decision to bring 2 of its motorsport divisions together. Opama Works, which I'm probably saying wrong, and Omori Works, okay? Now, Publication Division 3, or Opama Works, was in charge of taking care of the privateer teams, while Omori Works was in charge of running all the factory operations within their respective divisions for any sort of motorsport activities, specifically within Nissan. Now, people will claim that Nismo came before the 80s, and they'll say that it had to do with Prince Motor Company and running through the racing pedigree of the 60s and into the 70s. And while that did lay the planting of the seed for some of these divisions, it wasn't until the 80s where Nismo truly became a thing. As Nissan began to see the evolution of motorsport racing, and Nissan being a few years short of having their midlife crisis, Nissan began to bring them together to be specifically assigned to whoop ass in sports car racing. Now you have to remember, Nissan wasn't very old at the time of this kind of coming to fruition. When I say midlife crisis, I mean they were coming into the 40s range, okay? And what did they want to do? They wanted to make some noise, and there was a lot of marketing and attention in racing during this time. So what exactly did they make? They made something called the Saurus. It was a 2-liter turbocharged banana-looking thing that actually did fairly well, even though it didn't look like it had any sort of good looks that the future of Nissan would actually want to have or promote or put into some sort of mass production vehicle, which was fine. You can be ugly and still be fun to hang out with. And while Nismo was trying to make cars, they immediately began supporting the Japanese domestic F3 racing series, which was going all right for the brand. Nismo had a lot going for it because they had the backing of Nissan, and Nissan at the time in the 70s and 80s, they were doing relatively fairly well. You wanna know how badly I wanted Nismo when I was 18? It was insane. I wanted nothing else besides that car because it was so good looking. It still is an incredibly good looking car. The 370Z, I'd still argue, the way the Nismo is the way the base model should have been. Now, Nismo would continue to support Nissan's racing adventures continuously into the 80s and 90s, essentially acting as their steroid to actually getting things done when it came to running around a track. And eventually buzz started to spread about how this new division would absolutely be destroying everything in terms of any sort of racing style out there in the world, okay? Not the World Wide Web, the actual world. And it was crazy because it was done with some very unique power plants. In 1991, the Skyline GTR took the overall win at 24-hour Spa endurance racing with Nismo essentially behind the car. Their technology, their craft, and their willingness to engineer some very unique products for the GTR is why the GTR is the way that it is. In 1995, the GTR LM came in 10th place, and in 1998, the R390 GT1 finished 3rd at Le Mans. And you have to remember that this is a very exciting time, specifically because it's a Japanese brand. And even though these crazy cars weren't winning every race, the R32, on the other hand, which is where their bread and butter really was meant to be, was. The Japanese Group A race series would see that the R32, tuned by Nismo, would take 29 straight victories, straight dubs in a row. It just was like not having any sort of second place sauce, okay? It would ultimately win the Japanese GT Championship Group A competition for 4 years in a row. You wanna know why there's a lot of fanboys around this car? This is why. It also deleted some people in Australia from 1990 to 1993, where it got the nickname of Godzilla, which if you watched the video 2 weeks ago, you'd already know that. But maybe you didn't subscribe, and that's why you don't know. So I'm gonna need you to subscribe again. It's called action number 4. Nismo was also responsible for the R33 Skyline 400R. You know, the one that Top Rank importers had with Brian J driving around and being all Wisconsin-like. If you've seen that car popping around Top Rank, that is a 400R. That was one that Brian brought in. It's beautiful, it's magnificent. I saw it at SEMA. I saw people like almost stand on it, trip on it, want to jump at it. It was a pretty incredible car then when I was seeing it at SEMA, but it was an even more incredible car back in the time that it was launched. It is a damn expensive collectible now. But cars like the 400R and the 270R models were developed by the Chiba City Tuning Garage and came with a smile and a warranty to boot. Which, if you really think about it, these cars like the 270R and the 400R had some seriously special craft put into them, and Nissan still backed the platform. That's what made Nismo so special. Nismo was never really shy away from competition. They'd win most, but losing a few every once in a while too. But nowadays, outside of knowing Nismo's history and their connection to the legendary R32 through R34 platforms, along with the GTR itself, there's not much chit-chat about the acronym. If you jump out there, you don't see many people talking about how Nismo is doing. And it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And sure, you've got the GTR Nismo, the 370Z Nismo, and if you're overseas, you've got the March Nismo and the Note Nismo that are still in production. But you're not hearing them dominate LMP or the FIA. So what exactly happened? Where did they go? And why does no one really seem to talk about or appreciate the Nismo name anymore? Is it fact? Or as the cool kids would say, is it completely f***ing cap? I don't think cap's a thing anymore. Nismo found great success in taking production cars and transforming them into GT cars for racing, particularly in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. They even saw a ton of success in producing the LMP2 engines for the FIA, World Endurance Championship, and European Le Mans Series, but that's where kind of the flash would start to end. Nismo was starting to make engines. They weren't really making cars. In 2014, Nismo was going to enter the LMP1 category to go and attack Audi, to go and attack Toyota, to go and show the good old Porsche, or as they would call it, Porsche, all right, that they too had a little bit of bite underneath that jaw in the World Endurance Championship. And this was gonna be the next big step for Nismo, all right? This was gonna be how they were gonna brag and talk a little bit of shit about how they could do it too. However, that didn't happen because when they jumped into the 2015 24-hour Le Mans, Nismo were crushed. Like just, they didn't do that hot. A lot of gearbox issues, reliability problems, and things that caused the cars just to not finish the actual race. And after that, Nismo opted to push their schedule back and come back to the fray in 2016. Over time, though, they quickly realized that they shouldn't, and they never did. They actually never returned back into that racing segment. Now, that could have to do with political strife, or that could have to do with the fact that the CEO was running away from the world. But regardless of the fact, they weren't racing cars. Now, that pullback wasn't a major reason for Nismo to lose steam, but it certainly really didn't help. Another reason that Nismo lost a little luster underneath the Nissan's production strategy is because of Nissan just not really doing a good job at keeping their cars up to date. Nissan has a tendency to milk every possible drop out of their cars, at least in our opinion. The 370Z, for instance, has been been in production since 2009. It's been 12 years of practically the same platform. It's been 12 years, okay? And I don't care how many trims options you add. I don't care how many times you add a soft top, okay? Eventually, your audience is gonna get tired of the platform itself. Now, the mass production of the 370Z has allowed it to make an excellent entry car for things like drifting and other things like that, but for the Nismo brand, it loses its luster with volume and age. Now, the GTR Nismo is the same story, but the problem is that it's insanely expensive, and it doesn't meet the needs of normal people like you and people like me. So while Nismo was absolutely demolishing the racing scene with the GTR Nismo GT3 and the Super GTs and the GT500 races and the GT300 races and all of that stuff, that wasn't really translating over into everyday conversations in the United States, and as such, people they're just not latching onto the success like some of their domestic counterparts, which you can actually see specifically with cars like the C8 Corvette. And this was particularly true when it came to the production trim models that were for sale that carried the Nissan name with the Nismo title. It just wasn't a thing that people were really putting the two and two together. Now, Nissan does this thing where they really try to avoid making new sports cars, and I think that slowed down Nismo's opportunity in the public market for people like you and people like me. I just don't think there's cars out there that they can slap a Nismo on that people really vibe to. They did it with the Juke. It was okay, right? Ish. But it didn't hit the mark. What people wanted to see was a sports car. They wanted to see a coupe. They wanted to see a manual. They wanted to see something that had the teardrop design, okay? And they wanted that to have a Nismo nameplate on it. But that doesn't mean Nismo is gone. Nismo and its affiliates are still pretty active in the overseas racing markets. While they don't have the same sauce as they did back in the day for everyday drivers and everyday platforms, they're still trying to make magic happen in their own way, whether that's an engine production or something thereof. We will see if Nissan is up to the old task, specifically with the new Nissan Z, but I'm not entirely sure if they'll have enough money or have enough cash to put a Nismo nameplate behind that one for at least 3 to 5 years. But what do you think about Nismo? Do you follow them, or have they dropped off and been replaced by something else that you prefer to watch? Let us know below. And of course, if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. I'm Alex from Fitment Industries. We will see you later. Peace. Oh God, my phone.